Now we're going to learn how to use Unity to add sound and audio to our scene to make it more realistic. So I have a basic scene here just to show you an interior space that includes an exterior space. So we have an apartment and we're going to put some sounds. We'll have the knocking door sound. But then if you're in here and you think you're in a city and you're in this apartment and you're walking around, you might expect a little bit of city noise in the background. So we're going to add that first. So one of the things we can do is go to a specific part of the city, and you can see our apartment is up there. And I might come down to the actual ground here. And the reason I'm going to put the sound here is because we're using spatial audio that has a particular distance, which is important. So what I'm going to do is put the sound here. So we can go to Game Object, create an empty object or whatever we want to do. So let's go ahead and create empty. And so we just have an object that's sitting here on the ground near the street. And we're going to add a component. And we're going to type audio. And we're going to create an audio source and add the audio source to this component. Now, we also need to import our audio. So I have collected some files from free online sources, and I have a knocking at the door, the big city sound, and then a waves sound. And so I'm going to drag those into my assets folder here, or into the project folder. And you're going to see those are coming in. And if you're smart, you're probably going to create a folder that is for sounds. And we're going to move those into the sound folder. So now I have my sounds. Okay. Now, back to my object. Here I have my game object. Let's go ahead and rename it so it makes more sense. Call it street sound. Okay. And then under audio source, at the field for audio clip, I'm going to click here, and it's going to pull up all my available sounds that I have in here. And so we have one that is street sound called Big City. So I'm going to double click on that one. And then a couple of things we need to change is we want it to loop, so it'll always be on. We want it to play on wake. We also want to turn the volume down a little bit because this should be subtle and not overbearing in the room. Okay. And then we are going to change it from 2D to 3D. So notice I changed it to 2D to 3D. It now puts this this here. And so we have the ability to handle the roll off. We're going to leave this on logarithmic roll off. And right now the distance is set from 1 meter to 500 meters. Okay, so if you're 500 meters away, it should be pretty low. If you're really close to it, it should be much louder. So you can see this graph and you can see the line of where my listener is in comparison to where this is right now. So let's just listen to what this sounds like. So I'm moving around, but I'm not really hearing it. Okay. And so I want to make sure that my volume is kind of set to about 70%. And then now I want to make sure that I'm getting the right roll off here. So instead of 500 meters, I want you to change this to 100. Okay. And you'll see the graph changed. Okay. But we could even set it down to 20. Sorry, 50. So we're about 50 meters away. See where the red line is. So let's leave it at about 100. And let's see how that sounds. And I'm going to actually take the volume back to 1, so we could just leave that there and get a baseline. So my volume is 1, my max distance is 100 meters. So now you should have a slight sound. I don't know if you can hear it in the video, but it's just a nice subtle sound that we're hearing. And if you wanted that to be a little bit more, you could change your distances and play with that a little bit. Also, so that gives you a chance to set the scene sound. Now, another thing we might want to do is have some sound effects like a knocking on a door. So I'm going to go on back into my project and let's just go to my main camera. So you see I have an audio thing there. That's telling me there's a listener already attached to my first person camera. So that's good. We don't need to add, you can't have more than one listener. Okay. So let's just say we want a this door to have an object associated with it. Now, I can click on the door itself and I could attach a clip here. Okay, so I can set an audio source to this and put it right on the door. I'm not going to do that in this case because it's going to put it in the center of the door, right where you see that. That's where the clip will be. But when you're in VR, height matters. And so we want to make sure that if someone's knocking on the door, they're knocking high, probably at about 5 feet, not about 3 feet. And so this will matter. And so I'm not really going to put that there, but you could. You could do that. And so I'm going to remove that component. What I'm going to do is do just like we did before, go to Game Object, Create Empty. And I'm going to title this one Knocking Sound. And then I'm going to add the audio source. And I'm going to select the knocking on the door sound that I've imported already. And then here is where we want to make sure we have the play on wake. We want to make sure, for now, we're going to put it as loop just because I want you to be able to hear it over and over again, but you probably wouldn't have a sound effect set to loop. But I'm going to put it on loop for now. And then I'm going to change the spatial blend to 3D. And then, because this is a small room, I'm going to set this to 10 meters. Okay. And now, let's see what this sounds like. Okay. So you're hearing the sound of the knocking. It's kind of annoying, but you'll get the idea. And notice as I get closer, that sound really increases. And then as I go away, it decreases. Watch the graph and how my listener gets closer. Okay. So one of the things I want to do is put this where I think someone would actually knock on the door. And so again, that makes it a little bit more realistic so that if I'm hearing this in VR, it's going to sound like that is coming from the top of the door. Okay. Now, obviously, we wouldn't want it happening that fast and be on loop, but this was just to demonstrate the sound of knocking. Okay. So I'm going to turn the loop off in this case, so it's just going to knock once. But then now let's practice attaching one to an object. So I'm going to go over here to my TV here, and I'm going to attach this sound to the television. So I'm going to get my arrow tool, select the TV, add a new component in the lower right of my inspector tool. We're going to add an audio source, and I'm going to select one that was already imported, which was the waves, sea and ocean. And this is a nice long one. Double click on that. And then we're going to do the same thing we've done before. Put it on loop, set it to play on wake, change our spatial blend to 3D. And again, because we're in a room that's small, we're going to set this to 10 meters and probably turn the volume down a little because we don't want it to sound like we're actually at the ocean. Okay. Okay, so that's way too loud. We just want a nice subtlety to this, right? So we're going to go in and play with it and bring our volume down significantly. Okay. So now it's there. You have to get really close to it to hear it well. Okay. So a couple things I want to show you in here. You can change your reverb mix zone if you want to change the sound of the room and make it feel more echoey or not, and to help that. So we talked about reverb and the value of reverb to understand the size of a room, so that you can play with that there. And then you can also, if you want to get in and look at different roll-offs, I like logarithmic, but there's others that you can do. But then the other last thing I want to mention is priority. So priority comes in when we have things that might break up, or if the processor runs out of memory or is getting consumed a lot, what should it prioritize over the other? If you have a background sound that sounds choppy, that's going to be kind of pretty unrealistic. It might break the immersion. So I tend to give my background sounds a higher priority and my sound effects an actual lower priority, because I can actually do away, it's okay to lose a sound effect and it be all right. But if we have a breaking where it's choppy background, that doesn't sound really good. So you can change the priority and just set it from low to high, depending on which what's the role of this. This is probably not a huge deal right now, but just so you know that that control is there. Now, the last thing I want to do is talk about first person. So the first person character has specific things associated with it. For example, like your head bob and all those things. But then it also has the ability to change its the sounds that the footsteps make. So it has different sounds associated with all the different parts of the body. And in our case, it has audio clips for footsteps. This particular one has a lot of different options. You can choose if it's what material it's actually walking on. And so if we select a material in this case and define it as a physics material, such as wood, then when we come back here to our first person player here, we can set our physics material to wood. And then if you want to, you can add a particular clip to associate with wood. So every time this wood is, you could add a very specific footstep. Okay. And so here we have one for carpet, grass, concrete. So it doesn't look like I have the one imported, but I'm just going to click on one to show you. And then now the grass one will be associated with this one when he's walking around. So instead of having rough footsteps, it should have, here has more of a grass. Now we don't really want that to be grass, but you get the idea. You can put whatever clip you want. So you could go download a different type of footstep or make your own if you wanted to as an audio file. And then you may want to lower the effect of that so it's not so dominant in your story.